So, Johanna, it's so good to have you here. Beautiful,
Oh.
beautiful. You have such a voice. Such a voice.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dan. And it's an honor and a treat to be here tonight. And I also want to thank some of the familiar faces that I see in the audience from Benicia and other parts of the Bay Area and Oregon, people who I invited to come tonight, and some of them for the first time. So it's been really fun. I'm going to start with a poem that I wrote in 2014, back when we still had live events. And there was a real estate woman in Benicia who had poetry on the porch. And her office was in an old house on First Street. And she also is an artist, so she had an art gallery. But a couple of times a year, she'd invite the local poets to come and do a reading on the porch during like a wine and art event. And then people would maybe go into the gallery and buy some art, or maybe buy a house. I don't know. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. And in the poem is called The Poets Circus. And in the poem, the ringmaster is supposed to be Joel Fallon, who was Benicia's first poet laureate. And he died in 2016. And we still think about him and miss him. And I know he read at Sacred Grounds, because that was, I think, the first time I ever went to Sacred Grounds was I went to hear him feature. Okay. The Poets Circus. The ringmaster stands boldly on the front porch, his feet spread wide. He attracts a small crowd with his booming voice. Welcome to the Poets Circus, the greatest show on earth, he bellows. Inside, the paintings listen closely. They jostle each other for space. After all, it's hanging room only, and they don't want to miss a word, especially if one accidentally flies in through the window and lands somewhere. The abstracts are excited. They want all the color words, but favor the synonyms for red. The circular sculpture longs for a more concrete adjective, and the woman in the framed portrait hopes the word heart will slip into her sleeve. For the next hour, these accomplished acrobats fling poems high up into the air. The words perform amazing feats, tumbling and somersaulting under a tent of bright turquoise sky. The audience oohs and ahs as the poets catch sonnets and free verse in their bare hands, miraculously bringing them safely back to the page. The crowd cheers, claps for more, but the poets bow, then disappear. People wander up the porch and through the open door, looking for the paintings and a glass of wine. Thank you. This next poem is also a nod to Joel Fallon, because he loved haiku poetry. And this is titled Ode to Basho. At 3 a.m., the full moon is so bright, it turns my window blinds into lanterns, glowing white from the outside in. Suddenly, strange thumping sounds on the upstairs deck, and like a frightened child, I peer through the crack between the glass and the shade to see what lurks in the shadows, only to find two rotund, black-masked raccoons moon-gazing at the top of the steps like two venerable Japanese poets reciting Basho to each other under stars and planets, sharing an almost empty bottle of sake foraged from the garbage can in the alley. Then I think to myself, this should be me, sitting on the same steps, slightly tipsy and in good spirits, repeating the lines of the ancient master, watching the full moon rise and set. Where are you, my old friend, on such a beautiful night? And this next poem is from my book, Postcards from a Dream. It's called Inside Out Love. It takes courage to turn yourself inside out, to wear your gray muted side facing out and not feel embarrassed or apologize. No overblown pink roses blooming on your chest. No bold blue stripes running down your arms. Forget the polychromatic self you want them to admire. Instead, give that brightness to your shy, aloof soul, the one inside who sometimes feels colorless. Cover it with repeated images of magenta and turquoise birds, persimmon butterflies, and autumn paisley. It takes courage to show them your inside self, to let them discover your blurry side, the you that has no discernible pattern, your brand name faded beyond recognition, your inner self made of cloth that has been softened by tears. But note, your seams are straight and true. Label yourself durable, lasting. Tell them with your loud, beating heart exposed that even this world, this frightened, desperate world we live in, can be turned inside out with love. Thank you. And this next poem is the poem that won first place in this year's Love Poetry Contest. It's called Dreaming in the Time of the Pandemic. In my dreams, I've stopped searching for a refuge to protect me from death, stopped trying to find an abandoned house laced with memories of wisteria or a dark cave illuminated by candlelight. My silent poems written only for the petroglyphs. Now I dream with my eyes wide open, memorize the shape of every tree, the scent of roses bursting open in the heat of spring, the way the sunlight warms my body as I sit alone facing west. In my dreams, we hold up our hands and mirror each other, place palms and fingers together. Promise we'll never stop touching. And this next poem is called Time of Poetry, and it's a poem honoring Kokopelli, which is a deity in some Native American cultures, and he's the guy with the flute that dances around. In the beginning, when cloud people walked across a sienna clay sky, Cocopelli spun his poems on the desert mesas. In his sack, he carried creation stories, corn seeds, and unborn babies longing for a mother's kiss. His flute announced flying saucers and red rock sunsets. Twisting and turning down indigo canyons, he could change himself into a clever snake, a spiral of stars, a circular dream spinning on a sapphire river. The owl, the hawk, and the eagle dropped feathers in his honor. The earth, the sky, and the water sang his rain songs. It was a time of joy and enlightenment for all who listened. At twilight, the sound of his flute still drifts down the winding riverbed. Poems crooned by a trickster wind, the faint outline of a humpbacked shaman dancing on canyon walls. And this next poem retells the story of the weaving girl and the cowherd boy. And there are actually two stars in the sky. And it's a romantic Chinese folktale. This is called A Flock of Magpies for a Weaving Girl. When you looked at him across the Milky Way, it was love at first sight, no turning back. In that moment, you stopped weaving your father's shirts with threads of silver light, and your beloved no longer herded stars across vast skies of ancient constellations. You wanted the boy whose eyes were amber moons, made love with him in soft grasses light years away, forgot the passing of time, the unfinished shirts that no longer shined, the stars who, like dull cows, wandered off into fields of galaxy dust. Meeting each other only once a year was the punishment you suffered for your passionate spark. 7th month, 7th day, in the midnight darkness, you burn with longing, while a flock of magpies forms a bridge of wings over a river of stars. I really like trees. I'm sure all of you like trees. I write tree poems once in a while, and this is one that I like. Dancing with the trees. Oh, and I want to say I wrote this kind of a year ago while we're still having a drought, but I was kind of thinking about the drought that we're in and how the trees aren't really getting as much water as they should. Dancing with the trees. What if one day the trees in town uprooted themselves, miraculously moved towards the river in a spectacular procession, finally free to search for water after years of drought? What a sight that would be, their long, thick roots gliding down sidewalks, each tree leaving behind a trail of falling leaves, graceful branches swaying their Buddha arms in the air, long trunks creaking and groaning after being tethered to the ground since birth. As the trees pulled their roots out of the ground, People would be frightened, feeling the earth shake. Everyone would call to them, beg them to return, stumble into the gaping holes they'd left behind. I would follow the Japanese maple out of the garden, place my feet on its wizened roots, wrap my arms around its trunk, let it slow dance me to the river, the wind whistling an old love song. Okie doke. Let's see here. All right. What have I got left? Okay. I'm going to read this one. It's called Waiting for My Muse. And the epigraph is, all you have to do is write one true sentence. Ernest Hemingway. I sit on a bench at the water's edge, waiting for you to walk by. On this cold winter morning, I imagine you wearing a black parka and a green wool beanie you pull down over your ears. The egret knows who you are. Your missing shadow hides in its snowy feathers. I confess my desire to see you to the marsh grasses. They sway back and forth in the sharp breeze, hearing your silent voice. I wait patiently all afternoon, search the gray clouds for your silver blue eyes, listen to the lonely cries of wild geese winging overhead. At twilight, before I walk home, an owl swoops down from the broken sky, a hint of your smile on its moon face. Tonight, I will dream of you again. You will come to me as I sleep and whisper that one true line, the one I will never remember. And maybe this is the last one. It's called I Want the Word. I want the word tender to be the first word in a poem. I want a poem about tenderness. Tender rose petals easily torn, tender wound not yet healed, tender song still unsung. Give the world tenderness, stroke hair, gently wipe away tears. Soon a sparrow will build a nest in your arms. A pine tree will teach you its language. A swallowtail will flutter in your hair. Have tender regard for the moon, how she seems to gaze down tenderly at your small, fragile body, sending you her light. Thank you.
Yes, you can come on back and cheer her on. That was
Oh,
wonderful.
wow.
Wonderful.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
beautiful,
Oh,
Johanna.
thank you.
Thank you,
That's
Johanna.
great
That was
work.
great.
Oh, beautiful.
That was really great.
That was way cool.
Mm.